My name is Jen Kettleton-Butler. Can't even say my own name, so I'm a little bit nervous, so you'll have to bear with me. We're just waiting for a few chairs to come in because we've had a fantastic turnout, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who's come along this evening. Obviously, this is a really important issue for our community, and really thrilled with the turnout and the engagement that we're getting. So I'm going to just do a little bit of housekeeping while we get those chairs done. So everybody knows where the toilets are. There's some out there. The exits are here, here, and here. If you want to turn your phones off, that might not be a bad idea. Put them on silent. Anybody, if you've come in and you've got a question, I hope you've been able to write that down. We'd really love to be able to get back to everybody with a question. You can hand it to any one of the volunteers in a yellow shirt. We hope to answer a few. I think our presentation may also answer a few questions as well, but we really want to engage with and talk to as many people as we can. Just a little bit of an overview of the evening. I'm going to hand over shortly to Ken, our president, and Commander Roger Pearce is going to give us a brief address, and then I will talk, and I'll give you a bit of a presentation, and then after that we have our elected leaders here who are giving up a lot of their time this evening to come and... Speak up, please. Oh, okay, sorry. Sorry, is that better? Okay, apologies. I was told to hold it like an ice cream, so clearly I didn't eat my ice creams properly when I was a kid. Yes, so we might just get underway, I think. Is everybody ready to go? Yes. All right, great. So I am going to hand over to our president in just a moment, Mr. Ken Mewburn. Hold it up, sorry. Sorry. Okay. Mr. Ken Mewburn. He's a genuine living treasure of this community, and he's an advocate for our community and the environment. And if you haven't met him, you're missing out, because he's pretty good. His enormous intellect is only surpassed by his huge, kind heart and his wisdom. And our lucky little town is just so much the better for having him graced us with the benefit of his life's experience. He's had an extensive career in management in oil companies. He's a pilot, he's an instructor, a pilot instructor, conservationist, environmentalist. He has no official piece of paper from a university, but his intellect and knowledge and breadth of understanding of everything from engineering, hydrodynamics, geology, wildlife would surpass that of any scholar that I know. He's also a tireless volunteer for our community, serving his local church, right through to being president of the PPCMB, TAP, and various other local volunteer organisations. He's a fierce advocate for our environment, our Cubby mob, and he blends pragmatism and heart for our plight here in Caloundra, and he's got lots of really practical ideas on how we can solve the situation that we're in using innovative, environmentally conscious coastal engineering solutions. I should also mention, because he never will, that Ken received an Order of Australia Medal in 2020 for his environmental advocacy, and he also won a Senior Citizens Volunteer of the Year award in recent years as well. So he's a wise elder, he's a man who commands respect, he's someone I personally know to be exceptional, a man without peer, and we're really lucky to have him fighting for our town. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to the PPCMB President, Mr. Ken Mewburn, to say a few words.
Well, thank you for that, Jen. I only believe about half of it. But it's nice to hear it, I guess. Look, welcome to everybody here tonight. And on behalf of the PPCMB, I begin tonight by acknowledging the traditional owners and the custodians of the land, the Cubby, and the Inabara people who cared for the land on which the Pumicestone Passage catchment lies. I pay respect to their elders, past, present and emerging, and their care of the land on which we meet, work and live, and acknowledge Brian Warner, who is our cubby-hubby representative on our PPCMB. I also need to acknowledge some of the people that are here tonight. Firstly, I welcome the member for Fisher, Andrew Wallace. I think we've got Andrew Powell here too from, he's the Minister for the Environment and Tourism, the Minister for Science and Innovation. We have the member for Caloundra, Kendal Moreton. We have the Mayor of the Sunshine Coast, Rosanna Natoli. And we have Division 1 Councillor, Jenny Broderick, Division 2 Councillor, we have Terry Landsberg. We have two representatives from coastal engineering firms. We have Brian McCrae from RPS and Aaron Salyor from ICM down the end of the row. There's community groups are represented here tonight. I'm hoping that I've seen people from CRA and I think Whipskew and TAP should be here. If they're not, they'll hear it from me. I can show you. We've got an apology from Narelle McCarthy from Sunshine Coast Environment Council. We have an apology from Jarrod Bleijie, of course, the Deputy Premier. He's busy with other things in Brisbane tonight. We've got an apology from Ariana Doolan from the Pumstone electorate. We have an apology from Peter Castro from Shoreline Engineering. And tonight, just before I go into something else, I'd like to introduce our PPCMB people. If you look at them from there, you've got Graham Smith, you've got Ross Beach, you've got John, and you've got Tim, and you've got Don, and you've got John, and you've got Les, and you've got Brian, and you've got David, and you've got Jen. So have a talk to them. If you get a chance afterwards, I'll be around for a little while and happy to talk and answer questions. Now, a little bit about the PPCMB. We started this humble group after a public meeting on the 5th of March in 2020. And it had great ambitions and a vision that stated the Pumstone Passage Catchment Local Management Body provides stakeholders with an inclusive single point of contact that sustainably manages, promotes and supports the appropriate balance of environmental, recreational, economic and commercial needs of the Pumstone Passage catchment, its surrounding communities and its visitors. We brandished the slogan, local people with local values and local outcomes. We started with great enthusiasm, then COVID came to visit, then the island washed over, and following that our steering committee dissolved, metaphorically speaking that is. It wasn't actually a saltwater problem. As members were drawn away for personal reasons, the PPCMB went into a forced review but managed to regenerate in December 2023 with renewed enthusiasm, revised objectives and some new members of the team. The PPCMB has a realistic proposal to address the challenges facing the community, and we have now thankfully been guided to a pathway that we believe can lead to success. This requires ongoing consultation, cooperation and flexibility with all levels of government and the community. The outcome must protect this area of the Caloundra, Golden Beach and Pelican Waters into the new millennium with continuation of the environmental, social, recreational and economic benefits provided by Pumstone Passage. We have a unique and special double-ended barrier estuary. We need to keep it that way for now and for all future generations. Now, having said that, I'm going to hand over to Roger Pearce, the Commander of the Caloundra Coast Guard, who will explain some of the real benefits of the passage, some of the changes post the breakthrough, and after Roger you'll hear from Jen, who's our General Spokesperson. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken. I'm really pleased that we've got such a turnout tonight. It's magnificent. to the MPs, Madam Mayor, councillors. It's wonderful to have you here. I hope you can take something away after Jen's talk that will leave you feeling buoyed about what our options are. My role is basically just to give a little bit of history about what happened, and in 2021, during our Christmas period, we had some washovers on the King Tides in exactly the place it broke through a year later. So what we've done now, we've just watched. There were a number of local residents, and a lot of them are sitting to my right now, who tried to fix the barrier in 21, but it was futile. When Cyclone Seth sat 300 kilometres off our shore, it brought in a storm surge tide of 0.5 of a metre, coupled with the king tide at 2.3. So suddenly we're up to 2.7, 2.8 metres. And I know when that happens, our entire lawn at Coast Guard floods. So we know we've got a decent surge. This storm, Alfred, we got nowhere near it. So basically what we're doing now is we're just looking at the history of when that opened up on the 2nd of January 2022 and for the 3 or 4 years since then. Once it broke through, we had no control over it. We thought initially, the day after the breakthrough, I took Jason Hunt and Sel Saltman, the chief scientist for Queensland, out on the boat, and we had a look, and it was clearly evident with a 4 to 5 metre depth. There was no way we were going to stop it raging in. But now it's a different story. It's much shallower. It extends over 2 kilometres now, but it is manageable, and I believe with the right guidance, we can end up doing the best for the passage. Not only will we be able to sort the island out and return it to being a barrier island, we can also look at the opening of the Caloundra Bar, and I think long term that is by far the best solution for Caloundra community. It'll clean out the water at Bullcock Beach, it'll give Coast Guard full access. We have an extremely dangerous bar at the moment. It's very, very unpredictable. I'll admit that some days you can water ski over it, but that's rare. And where the problem is not right where the landmass is. It's about 300 to 400 metres out to sea, which has developed into a very large sand delta of about 1.5 metres at low tide. It goes as low as half a metre at low tide. Once you get to the end of that sand delta, it drops from 1 metre, 1.5 metres, down to 6 or 7 metres. And that's where the waves are standing up. You might remember as a little kid at the beach, you'd stand there at the very shore and the waves would break quite firmly. That's what's happening at that 7 metre mark, and that's what's rolling vessels over. We've never been so busy as a Coast Guard, pulling people back in and rescuing people on that bar since it opened. So what I'd like to do is basically, I'm overhearing let nature take its course, because it's going to end badly for everyone, and I think in the long run, with a little bit of guidance, this can be done very civilly and very properly, and I think economically, when you look at the big picture, I don't think it's going to be that expensive. But let's hear Jen. She's an absolute wonderful advocate for this mission that the group are on, and I'd like to commend her to you. She's got a heart of gold, and I'm sure when you listen to her, she'll talk for about maybe 2 to 3 hours. Oh, sorry, Jen, half an hour, and she'll explain what they're really thinking. So thank you very, very much, and enjoy the presentation.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, I've developed a little bit of a trademark online, and that's wearing my hat backwards. I never meant to be a Facebook influencer or somebody famous, but I was out on my boat, right? And when you're driving your boat along, the wind takes your hat off, so you put it backwards, and that's how this came about. But I'm going to take it off because we are in an RSL, but there are some merchandise up the back there. We are a fully volunteer organisation. I don't get paid for any of the work that I do, and nobody here is getting paid for the work that they do. And as a matter of fact, we have self-funded a lot of the expenses involved in this organisation. So if you want to give us a little bit of support, you can become a member, you could give us a donation, you could buy yourself a limited edition shirt, which is pretty cool, or one of my hats. I used to be a graphic designer, by the way, in a previous life. So I'm just going to quickly, well, I've probably touched on that. Who is this PPCMB and this clueless chick with her hat backwards anyway? I've come in for a bit of a caning on social media. People don't like my hat backwards, and it's sort of now become my little motto. But in terms of a bit about me, because I wouldn't blame you all for wondering why I've got my knickers in such a knot over this issue. My name is Jen Kettleton-Butler. I'm a fourth generation direct descendant of the Clark fishing family, who settled on the shores of Caloundra in 1922. If you want to know more about my family and their contribution to this town, there's a park at Happy Valley called Clark Place, and there's a plaque there that pays tribute to the incredible contribution my family have made to Caloundra. That's my uncle, by the way. He didn't listen to me, he never does. Yeah, so look, I actually just want to point this out because this is a really important point to make. Having lived in Caloundra for so long doesn't give us any more rights than anybody, but we feel it really does give us a responsibility to share our knowledge. I learned to swim by jumping off the jetty at my grandparents' house at 24 Malodja Avenue. My Uncle Les, right here, that's him, out there on his phone. He taught me how to bait my first fishing hook, and I remember him dealing with the first happy moment I caught on that jetty when I was a kid. Do you remember that, Uncle Les?
Oh, yeah.
I think it stung you.
It was only half the length of the one you were just telling about.
Fishing stories. Yeah, look, he is a passionate advocate for this place, and he's still teaching me about the best fishing spots in the passage, and I'm really proud of him. As a matter of fact, he rode out Cyclone Alfred on his 56-foot boat that he lives on in the passage by himself. As that cyclone tripped over the bottom of Moreton Island, my uncle was lashed into the mangroves. He had 4 sea anchors out, and he was in the exact spot where his father rode out many other cyclones here in Caloundra. So we have a fair amount of experience in our family, fair to say, with cyclones in this town, and there's more of them than people would actually know. In the 50s, there was a cyclone that had a storm surge go through 24 Malodja Avenue that came up to my shoulders, Uncle Les?
Yeah, about 1.5.
About 1.5. So, anyway, my grandfather, he's there. He's a very special man in my life. Him and his brothers are credited with more than 50 rescues on the Caloundra Bar before the life-saving and the Coast Guard services were established in Caloundra. Before the event of outboard motors, indeed, they'd risked their lives rowing out in treacherous conditions to save people in trouble on the Caloundra Bar, and in some instances these were actually retrievals. And this is the nature of the service. My family, the Clark family, and I can see a lot of my Clark family out there. And this is the nature of the service and the contribution we've made to this town. But having said that, there's a mob that knows a little bit more about this town than we do, and that's the Cubby Cubby mob, and I just want to pay my respects right now. Brian, I'm really glad that you're here, thank you. Appreciate it, bro. So I also own a local business in Caloundra that employs 9 staff, and which provides the support services that enable 10 GPs to deliver their care to this community, and that's including my wonderful wife up the back there, Dr. Nicola. I'm absolutely guilty of being a full tilt frother when it comes to surfing, boating and fishing. So I have a bit of a vested interest in making sure our passage is looked after. And you know, actually on that point, I would like to actually do a quick little survey of this room. Who here likes to go fishing in the passage? Raise your hands. It's So this is our fishing mob, yeah? Who here likes to go boating? The same people? Or got any differences? Okay. Who likes to go windsurfing? Yeah, awesome. Who here is from Golden Beach? Yeah, yep. Who here is from Pelican Waters? Diamond Head? Southern area of the CBD around Maloja Avenue? Yeah, okay. Who isn't from any of those places? Happy Valley? Anywhere else? Curramundi, yeah, okay. And look, you could be forgiven for thinking that this problem is actually a problem for Golden Beach and Diamond Head and, those at Maloja Avenue, but I think that that is the wrong way to think about this, because this is a problem for our entire town, our entire community. When that island eroded, I'm going to keep going, what's my slides? When that island eroded and eroded so rapidly over the last 50 years at a rate that was nowhere near commensurate with the sort of storms that we were having, we watched and we saw it just disappear, and now we've got this this really dangerous situation, basically, because those suburbs were built on the assumption of the ongoing protection of that barrier island, and without it, we have no dunes to protect Golden Beach, and we've built an entire community there. So that's essentially what we're here to talk about. I just wanted to go back a little bit and just finish what I was talking about in terms of my involvement with the PPCMB. Last October I was asked to help my uncle prepare a presentation for the Coast Guard on the issues with the Bribie Breakthrough. He was a member of this local volunteer group with a terrible acronym, PPCMB GYG, and I've only really just got the hang of it myself recently. At that point in time I thought, much like, and maybe I'm talking to the choir, I'm not sure how many people actually disagree with this, but at that time I thought, what could you possibly do about it? How can you stand at the edge of the ocean and tell the tide not to come in? How do you fight Mother Nature? And why should you even try? And I remember reading the BMT report titled A Review of the Causes of Northern Bribie Island Erosion. And I remember reading that because Uncle Les was adamant that something needed to be done, and I read it and I thought, well, nothing to see here. It was all just the weather. It was Mother Nature, which is largely what this report concluded. Case closed, I thought, so I did my best to help my uncle with his PowerPoint and declined the request to get involved further. But then I was asked to attend a PPCMB meeting, and I listened. It was pretty difficult to understand because some of these are complex issues, tidal attenuation, storm surges, AHD. I certainly hadn't, I wasn't as familiar with them as maybe some of you are, but I found them a bit complicated. But bit by bit I started to piece together a few of these concepts, and I started to get to know these men who at the time were pretty easy to dismiss as a bunch of disorganised, sorry guys, old retired dudes with nothing better to do with themselves than sit around and whine about the good old days. And I just tried to gently disengage, but they kept asking me for help, to put together presentations, to draw diagrams, to help them strategize about how to communicate their views. And I really didn't want to let down my uncle, so I kept trying to help. And somewhere in amongst all of that, it started to actually make sense to me what was going on. They kept officially asking me to join. I kept saying no. Don asked if he'd present to the council last October. I said no, thanks Don. I was very busy running my business. I've got 2 teenage sons to raise who are just over here, by the way. Ollie and Darcy, can you just say hello to everybody? I'm very proud of my boys. Anyway, they asked me, what happened next? I was essentially, they kept asking until I just couldn't, say no, and and I thought, oh, I'll sit down with Ken Mewburn, and I was essentially interviewing him to see if he could explain to me what the problem was and how he thought I could help. Do you remember that little time, Ken? Yeah, we were supposed to have a little 1 hour meeting, and I'd literally said I've only got an hour. And it turned into a 5.5-hour marathon. And I walked away totally overwhelmed, but knowing I had to step up, because I was convinced that our town was in absolutely grave trouble. And so they asked me to be their volunteer, their marketing comms person, and their spokesperson, which is the role I now have. And I've been doing that pretty much full-time, 7 days a week, since the 3rd of January this year, because I genuinely fear that we have no time to waste. And I'm not trying to be hysterical. Our town is on its knees right now. It's vulnerable without our barrier island, and I feel that we're playing Russian roulette with the weather. So I've got this unique skill set in marketing and comms, and a love for this town that runs deep into my soul. I like to think I understand politics and strategy and all of those things, and I've got a bit of the gift of the gab, and I'm going to actually stop now and just get on with it. But this place put a platform under my family and that allowed us to live productive, beautiful, rich lives here on the shores of what is absolutely the best place on the face of the planet. Am I right? Yeah. How good's Caloundra? Yeah. And so, oddly enough, for reasons that are well beyond me, I also have crossed paths with a few key leaders and politicians lately who can help Caloundra get the action that it needs. And so, before I explain our report, for those wondering, my only agenda is to give back to the place that gives so much to me and my 4 generations of my family, and to finish the important work that my grandfather believed in with every fibre of his being. I live high and dry in Aruna, by the way, and my business is also high and dry in 4th Avenue. So a lot of people probably wonder that, you know, why are you doing it? You must live in Golden Beach. But Golden Beach is the heart of this town, this community, and if we let it go, we lose what's special about Caloundra. And if the worst happened, and that scenario, Alfred, pretty much took us right to the edge, didn't it, man? We were a bit worried. We were a little bit worried. You know, if the worst happened, you think about the scar that would leave permanently on our town, and it doesn't have to be that way. We've got the ability to actually do something about this, and I think that we should. The situation that we've got is currently absolutely untenable. So let me tell you why. So I got to work, and I've got a Masters of Business, and I've written a lot of reports in my time, and I've got an academic bent to me. I also hang out with lots and lots of smart doctors, and I'm evidence-based. And I knew that what we had to do was condense some of this information that my grey beards over here knew, and we had to make it digestible so that people could understand what we were talking about. And so we decided to write this report. This will be going up onto our website, which is about to be published in the next couple of days. But I'm going to present to you some of the key information in that report, because we have done a full literature review. There's science that backs up what we're saying. And we've read every single one of the reports, and we know what's going on. There are literally thousands of hours worth of research in what we've done. This is what we're made up of. It's across our entire community, you know, from conservationists to residents to business owners to boaties and everybody else in between. So what's the problem? Better get there. Does anybody need me to explain the problem to them? It's pretty obvious, isn't it? We've got a gaping hole in our barrier island, and all of our communities were built under the assumption of its ongoing protection. You know, over the last 50 years, rapidly accelerating rates of erosion have severely narrowed the width and height of the dunes on the northern tip of Bribie Island, creating several weak points that became susceptible to washovers, and we sat by and we watched. And the livability of Golden Beach and Diamond Head and Pelican Waters in the southern area of the Caloundra CBD is untenable under the assumption that Bribie Island is gone, and we have to defend those communities from the shoreline against storm surges that will, yes, reach 4.7 metres. Now, we're not making that up. This is this document here. It was released as a result. I think it was revised after the breakthrough because tides changed in the passage after the breakthrough happened. And one of those levels is essentially 4.7. So this is Jellicoe Street. So if we were to get the worst case scenario, which is a storm surge coming through that gap, that's the level that the water would come to. And there would be wave action on top of that. So you can see that the sandbanks aren't going to protect anything, the foreshore's not going to protect anything, and even having a 3-metre high rock wall along there is not going to protect anything. So just, outlining our process. If you haven't read these documents, by the way, who's read all of these documents? Hand in your air, who hasn't read these documents? Oh, come on, guys. Don't make me do all the work. Or Ken, he's busy enough. Okay, no, well, they're readily available. But we've got a lot of historical information, we've got scientific information. We have been meeting with all sorts of community groups, businesses and developers, and we've been trying to get out there and do community education and feedback. And as recently, I've become a media star, apparently. And that was literally out of necessity, because the report that I was in the middle of writing and collating, it wasn't ready to go, but we knew what it said, and then all of a sudden our worst nightmare was coming true, because I think it was on the 3rd of February we were up meeting with the mayor, and very kindly gave us an audience, and we were talking about our concerns. And I remember saying to the mayor, the top 2 risks on the Sunshine Coast Council's disaster management plan is tropical cyclone and east coast low, and I think it's my fault, and I'm sorry. I think I conjured Alfred, because honestly Alfred was our worst case scenario. That was the thing that we were so worried about. Without that barrier island there to protect us from a storm surge, the potential, we've never been tried, it's never been tested, and we were very lucky that cyclone ended up crossing south of us, I think. So anyway, we've literally spent thousands of hours doing this. We've also brought in some experts for some initial advice, and I really want to thank those experts, because they've been very patient with me, been very generous with their time. They're down the front here now. Aaron from ICM and Brian from RPS. And these guys have driven all the way up from the Gold Coast. And there's this thing down at the Gold Coast that's called the A line. And being the marketing person that I am, I think we need a C line up here at Caloundra. But I'll get onto that a bit later. But we have consulted with coastal engineers, because we're not coastal engineers, right? There's a lot of technicality to building coastal engineering protection systems. Everybody can say, let's put a rock wall here and let's put geobags there, but there's all sorts of calculations with water flow. There's drainage we have to consider that comes down from overland drainage. There's a thing called tidal attenuation, and I can't wait to explain that to you all. But that's really important. Tidal attenuation is really important. And what we also want to do is, that bottom thing there is, we need to conduct a study on the unique confluence of sand migration that happens at the breakthrough site, because we think there's something a bit different going on there, and we don't think the science is quite in on that yet. And we've also got a bit of a proposal there to look into that, because it's important. So I've broken my presentation up into past, present and future. So apologies I haven't put photo credits on here, but I think Donna Cannon, where are you? Are you out here? You said you were coming. Anyway, she's wonderful. She runs a Facebook page. I got these off of her Facebook page. What you can see in this is probably one of the earliest photos of our town from the air. And what you can note from it, I'm just going to use my little doobie-lacker. Have a look at how wide our barrier island was at that time. It was very, very wide, and you can also see that in the 1941 shot there as well, very clearly. What I'm going to show you now is a series of photographs that we've got, and we managed to procure this. And what this is a photogrammetry presentation of overhead shots of the northern Bribie Island and Palmerston Passage area. I'm just going to open it up and show you what it looks like. But essentially, we're talking about overhead shots taken at a set height with longitude, latitude lines on them and with north pointers, and it gives us a lot of information and data. And what I've been able to do with that is I've overlaid a couple of things. So here we have one of the earliest aerial images of Bribie, sourced from that book. You can see how wide our barrier island Bribie was, and it was relatively stable in more or less equilibrium for 3,000 years before white settlement, and that is from a paper written by Lester et al. And it was a paper that appeared in this conference called PASCON in the year 2000. And it's titled An Assessment of the Stability of the Bribie Island Spit based on studies of geomorphology, sedimentology and shoreline processes. And it's actually really good reading. So our best mate Bribie provided natural protection for an ecosystem and for a community that grew under the assumption of its ongoing protection. In the last 140 odd years since white settlement, anthropogenic interventions. Now, for those of you who don't know, and I didn't know, so there's no shame in this, anthropogenic means human, like we did it. So those anthropogenic interventions have fundamentally been changing this waterway and island. Agriculture, land clearing, oyster leases, housing developments, drainage systems, canal estates and dredging, both inside of the passage and offshore in Moreton Bay, have all had a significant impact. But not according to this BMT report. According to the BMT report conclusions, the common sentiment around town is, we will have heard it 1,000 times, is that it's just Mother Nature at work. And also the prevailing sentiment up until this point has been that we shouldn't intervene. Maybe we asked the wrong questions, maybe the science is incomplete, and maybe we need a second opinion, and I think maybe that's where we're heading. But we do know that the erosion has been accelerating rapidly over the last 50 years, according to another scientific paper, and according to that same scientific paper. And I'm just going to put up a little extract of what it says here, and I don't know whether you can actually read it, so I'll read it out to you. But this was back in the year 2000, and it said that the erosion, this rapid erosion, was not commensurate with the rate of storm activity. So I guess it begs the question, is it really just Mother Nature? And this rapid loss of at least 100 metres of the eastern shore and the breakthrough point seems to have coincided with many human interventions around this time, including the enormous increase in shipping channel traffic and dredging just 1 nautical mile offshore in the Northwest Channel and in Moreton Bay since the 70s. The Leicester paper, presented at PASCON 2000, made this chilling prediction as well. So we knew about this back in 2000. If this trend continues, it is likely that the spit will break through somewhere in the vicinity of Fort Bribie. Well, that's a tick. Closure of the present inlet may occur following breakthrough of the spit. Tick. And here's the clanger. Lester and his mates must have had a crystal ball, I think, because they went on to say, based on the measured rates of retreat, a breakthrough is likely in approximately 50 years. However, if the rate of erosion continues to increase, as it has since 1972, a breakthrough of the spit may occur in approximately 20 years. Well, guess what? It broke through 21 years later. So we're ahead of schedule. And that's why I'm a bit worried, and that's why I'm not sleeping very well at the moment, because I'm worried about our town. We knew this was coming, and we didn't do anything about it, and that's a bit of a shame. But what I'm going to do now is, if you just watch, can everybody see that red line relatively clearly up there? We might have to turn the lights down a little bit, Marty. Can you put lights down? But this is just an interesting sequence that I'm going to show you. What I did is I lined up, using Photoshop. So this is not precise, right? I can't say that this is to the metre accurate, but it's fairly accurate. So what I've got here, see this yellow line here? That represents the exact spot where the Bribie breakthrough occurred in 2022. And I outlined the island in red. This is 1940. This is where the oyster leases were. And over here is Lions Park. The purple one is where the new breakthrough just happened. And this is where there's a washover happening in, what do you call it, Uncle Les? First Gap? You call it First Gap?
First gap.
First Gap, there you go. So now that you've orientated, I'm just going to zoom you through. So this is 1960, and that is the outline of the island. Oops, where's my doobie-lacquer gone? What's happened? Oh no, technology failure. Why? Anyway, I'm going to have to get on without it. So the red outline, you can see how much this changes, and what you also can see here, quite interestingly, a lot of people have this absolute belief that it's going back to where the bar has been once before. And this is 1961, and the photos that they use to say, look, it's okay, the bar's been there before, it's going back to where it should be. This actually disproves that, because you can line it up. Oh, you sir, what's your name? Legend, I reckon. Oh, who brings their own laser pointer? Like, seriously. Mate, yes. Well done. Thank you, sir. Somebody buy that man a beer. Okay, great. I'm back in business. Because what I really wanted to talk about is, this is an untrained entrance, right? And so what happens here with an untrained entrance is that the tip of the island will advance and the sand here will retreat, and vice versa. But what's always happened is that the channel's always come back up around here and gone out this way. So this is 1961. Now, the oyster leases was an interesting time, I think, in the evolution of our passage, because when we stuck these things out into the channel, I think what it did was change the direction. Is that about right, Uncle Ken? Change the direction of the water? Yep. So it changed the direction of the water, and we started to get a little weak spot in here. So I'm going to move on to the next one. So here we're at 1971, and you can see the island's holding its own. We've lost a little bit, and the tip here has changed, but it's still flowing up and out in the position of the old bar. And here we are at 79, still holding its own. 82, I think we're starting to lose a little bit here. And then, have a look at this. Look at how much we lost here. Lots. This is the lead light, by the way, which is now right in the middle, and that's been a reference point all the way through as well. So, yeah, you can see the dynamics of the untrained entrance changing, constantly changing. That's what these things do. And we're actually one of the few coastal communities of our size that hasn't actually stabilised its entrance. You know, if you look up and down the coast around Australia, like it's most communities that build next to, of any substance next to the ocean like we do, they put in some sort of protection and stabilising mechanism for their bars. Now we'll get on to 2015, and she's really losing it now, or he. And then, you know, interestingly, a cubby elder told me that they feel as if the kangaroo's tail is broken. That's how they felt about this. So we'll get through to, here we go, August. And it's so sad to see our beautiful protection, our beautiful best mate, but have a look at how much we've lost. And there is the pylon that sits out in the middle of the bar. And it's a sad reminder every time I go past it, because it's just you cannot help but look and go, how much of our island have we lost? And you look at down here, it's getting thinner and thinner. And of course, by this stage, we've got the bar silted over, and we've got not a lot of flush going on in here. But in the meantime, we've got a lot of our overland drainage still emptying into here. And the water, interesting thing is that we've got some water quality tests that we've been doing independently. Well, it wasn't us, was it, Ken? It was TAP. So TAP decided to fund some water quality tests from here at the Coast Guard, and the control site was down at Military Jetty. Because obviously they're getting flush, good tidal flush, and we're not getting a lot of exchange up here. And unsurprisingly, in times when we've got a lot of overland rain, we're getting E. coli and bacteria. And I can personally attest to the fact that I've been given medical records, not via my practice, by the way. Somebody has come to me, and they had a mozzie bite. They were playing right here with their grandchild, and they were hospitalised. They nearly lost their leg through a very terrible infection, and very much likely related to that water. So I wouldn't let my kids swim in it, and I wouldn't eat a fish out of it, that's for sure. So here we are at January 2025, and this was just before the cyclone. So, you know, you can see even between those two, like the August and 2025, it's still changing, and this bar is twisting this way. I go out over it a fair bit as well, and I tell you what, I've hit the bottom coming back in. It's so easy to misjudge, and what the commander's talking about, you can see clearly here. Very shallow out here, and then straight into that deep water. And you've got to have your wits about you when you're going out there, that's for sure. But look at how much of our island is missing. And look, when you are out at the fairway marker out here and you look back at our town, it's like a grade 2 kid's front teeth have been knocked out. You just see how vulnerable our town is right through that entrance. And it worries the heck out of me. I'm going to just quickly move on. The thing is, we were actually really warned for decades. This is not our first rodeo from Caloundra asking for some action to be taken on this issue. My grandfather there, many locals like my grandfather knew this was coming. I remember sitting at his knee as a child at his house at Malodja Avenue, listening to him talk about the dangers of Bribie eroding and that something needed to be done to stabilise the bar entrance. And you can see where he is, so that's Malodja Avenue, there's Gemini Towers, and these are his mullet boats. Gee, that shed was awesome fun to play in, wasn't it? I can still smell it. Anyway, endless calls from the community for help to do something have been happening since the 60s. I don't have enough time actually tonight to go through all of the campaigns from residents, but I'm just popping a few of the articles up here so you get the picture. But there were pushes throughout the 60s, the 70s, the 80s and the 90s. And Caloundra still wants action. And that's on the shirts out the back there, so I thought that was pretty appropriate to put onto those shirts. I think it's going to be a collector's item. Ken will sign them for you later, won't you, Ken? Yeah, thanks, Ken. But here's the thing. I think it was about in the 90s, and don't quote me on it, we got a lot of red and green tape that prevented any action since the 90s, because we've got 14 government departments and authorities, 40 pieces of legislation, 80 policies governing what can or cannot be done with this little part of the world. And the irony for me is that the very thing that's trying to protect the place is the same thing that's slowly destroying it. Yeah, here. It's sad. It's well intentioned, but anyway, whose jurisdiction is it anyway? It probably depends which bit you're talking about, because just to be clear and to be fair to the Sunshine Coast Council, their jurisdiction ends, is it correct, Mayor, at the edge of the water at Golden Beach or Terry? Is that about right? Or do you go out a little bit? The high tide one. Yeah, thank you. So, you know, Sunshine Coast Council is only responsible down to the shoreline at Caloundra and Golden Beach. Ramsar status, it's a wetland treaty. It's a really important one. We've got amazing birds that fly like halfway around the world from Russia that land on the tip of Bribie, or well, actually more in the wetlands, actually. Is that correct, Ken? It's more in the wetlands?
It's the migratory bird convention.
All the way down the Palestine. Who's a bird watcher here? Yes. We got some pretty cool birds that land here, and that's important, right? The Ramsar status. But unfortunately, that ties our hands a lot with what we can do. We've got the marine park, the state government, the shipping channels, it's Port of Brisbane, MSQ, and is Bribie even in the Caloundra State electorate, Kendal? Is that? It's not, is it? So you can see the problem that we've got. It's pretty much, it's everybody's responsibility and it's nobody's responsibility. My mum used to have a great saying on the wall when I was growing up. Do you remember that one, Mum? Everybody, where are you? It was everybody's job and everybody was asked to do it, but somebody could have done it. And anyway, it's a bit like that. And so I'm just zooming up a little bit just so you can see. We've got Ramsar wetland. We've got, I'm going to look over my glasses, Conservation Park Zone. We've got Habitat Protection Zone, Marine National Park Zone. And a lot of that makes it very difficult for us to actually do anything practical to intervene and support our island. So this myth that gets around it's just nature, the fact is that Mother Nature has been on the run and was interfered with a long time ago in this neck of the woods. And the problems we face now are broadly associated with altered land use and hydrology of our coastal system. So it's not really Mother Nature. Mother Nature is a bit broken. And I've put together this. You won't be able to read it, but in our report, when you can download it, you'll be able to see it. So I just thought, I've got to organise this information somehow. I just need to make sense of it, even just for myself. So natural processes down here. So these are all the cyclones that we've been having and the big weather events. And I love that word, anthropogenic, human activities up here. So, you know, this is oyster leases and putting in rock walls and Golden Beach going in and all sorts of, I actually have to read it off my screen because I can't read it there. But all sorts of things that we've done in here. And then you've got the shipping channel story that starts to come in from about the 1940s onwards, and I'll talk about shipping channel in a minute. But, you know, we are seeing in 2012 to 2019, 7 million cubic metres for construction cement. The Brisbane runway, 14 million cubic metres. Brisbane taxiway, 15 million. There's been enormous volumes of sand that are being dredged from Moreton Bay to ensure a safe depth that's maintained for those cargo ships. And there's plans to extract a further $96.5 million in the next 20 to 25 years. The Port of Brisbane has 5,300 vessel movements annually. It's looking at currently, there's this. It's a good read. The Port of Brisbane Channel Enhancement Project, initial advice statement, and there's some really interesting information in there about the plans for the port. And just let me be really clear here. We're not against the port, and we're certainly not against shipping. We know that that shipping channel is the lifeblood of our economy, and that economy funds our schools and our hospitals and our police, and we're absolutely all for it. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that. But I think there's a way we can all live together a bit more happily. So natural coastal processes. Uncle Ken taught me this, so I hope I tell it to you right. But you've got this thing called accretion, and you've got erosion. So erosion takes the sand off the edge of the beach through waves and storms are carrying it off the beach, and then the accretion is when it gets returned to the beach and waves carry sand back to the beach. And then there's all sorts of ocean currents, and we're in a little bit of a strange place here at Caloundra. We think there's something a little bit different going on with the currents, and that's why we think the science is not quite there, and that we need to have a bit of a closer look at it. But yeah, anyway, you know, you've got nice high foredunes, and that protects your communities that all sort of build up around here. And then when you've got a shipping channel in the situation, it's not just nature, we think it's a case of interrupted natural coastal processes. So essentially you can see that the island's getting flatter because it's falling, it's being taken out to sea, and it's actually falling into the shipping channel, and when it falls in there, it gets dredged and it gets used as a resource, and that's fair enough, but we need some of our sand too, wouldn't you say, Uncle Les?
Absolutely.
So we just think fair's fair. Let's help out Bribie and make sure that we get the sand back on the edge of our island. So let's talk about the shipping channel here just for a little bit. For those who don't know, this is the way how the ships come in to Port of Brisbane. This is Port of Brisbane down here. That white area is reclaimed land down there at the Port of Brisbane. It is the third largest port in Australia. $55 billion in international trade per annum. It starts near the intersection of Caloundra and Bribie, and as we all know, it's magnificent to watch those big ships turn there at Northwest 2. But we suspect, just got a sneaking suspicion, it's got something to do with that erosion there. And we'd just like another set of eyes on that. So plans to expand a lot of this in that document that I was telling you about to a double lane so that we can get twice as many ships through, which is good. We've got to get goods in and we've got to get goods out, and that is the world that we live in. And interestingly, globalisation and containerisation between the 1980 and 2011, the world's shipping cargo fleet quadrupled. So, you know, we all know that we live in a globalised world now, so that's a lot of ships going in and out of here. There's a lot of sand that's having to be dredged here because as they come in, if they get a spot where it's a bit shallow, they tell the port, I think, is that right, Uncle Les? And then they...
Every ship that goes into the port has a pilot. It's mandatory. So the pilot takes the ship in safely, but his other job is to monitor any sand ridges that are building up. And he puts a lat long on those sand ridges, and when he gets into the port, it's handed to the port office. The port office then hands it to the dredge master, and then the dredge master comes out and he sucks that up, and it's taken away and sold instead of being put back on into the system and letting it come up along Bribie.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's plans to extract a further 96.5 million cubic metres in the next 20 to 25 years. And that sand is planned to be used, it's on page 2 of that document. That sand is planned to be used in building manufacturing, beach nourishment, land reclamation projects. It may look to sell sand interstate or overseas, and the royalties are paid to the Queensland government. So look, like I said, we support shipping and Port of Brisbane. We just want a little bit of our sand back. You know, with $55 billion of trade per annum, it seems like a little bit of a rounding error to me for the government, and I think this has got to be a multi-level government response, to invest 150 to 200 million in restoring our barrier island with a long overdue, innovative coastal engineering system. Who'd like to see that happen? Yep. Yeah, me too. Me too. Because the alternative is unthinkable. The destruction of Caloundra through a storm surge would cost billions of dollars, set Caloundra's economy back decades, and would fundamentally scar our town forever. And we just can't afford that. And if you doubt it, this is one of the dredges working just off of Northwest 2, and this is its details of what date, and I think that was in December last year. So this was my famous whiteboard, because I was really worried when Alfred was menacing us, and here we're going to get to the guts of it. It's my rough drawing. This is like back in 2020, but we had this nice thick barrier island, and we had this narrow channel here, and that attenuated the amount of water that could get into the passage. So basically it limited it, and that meant that it had a lot longer to go, and then it'd have to go back again and goes back out. And that meant that, let's say the tide would only come to here at high tide. When the island broke through and silted up over there, we suddenly had I think it was 1,800 metres wide, the opening, with a fifth of the distance to come in. So the tide's coming in a lot quicker, which means it's coming higher. And I think it's coming higher by a factor of about 26 centimetres on high tide. But it also means that it's going out a lot quicker, which means we're getting lower lows as well, by much the same. So the problem we had that we were really worried about is this. See this purple line here? Who's read the Core Logic report? Anyone? Yeah? Okay, you guys really need to do some reading. And this one isn't pleasant reading. This report here is written by Core Logic, and I'm going to skip a few slides because I'm on this point at the moment. Oh, there's Kendal. Storm surge and coastal erosion. Coastal risk scores for financial risk assessment. This report was written in March 2022 by Core Logic, and if anybody knows anything about Core Logic, what they do is they do analysis for the insurance and property industry, and one thing we also know is that insurance companies don't calculate risk incorrectly. They went around every single coastal property market in Australia, and they used a criteria to rank them on very high risk right down to no risk of storm surge and coastal erosion. And this is the table that really turned my stomach, because it comes up with the top 10 suburbs by number of buildings exposed to Core Logic's very high. So that's the highest you can get. So this is nationwide. This is the nationwide league table of suburbs most at risk of storm surge. Caloundra comes in at number 8, Golden Beach at number 10. But guess what? We're both subject to the same risk, those suburbs, because I think you can actually very safely add them together. And look where we go. Second, first, or the second. And this was pre-breakthrough. This is lagging data that would have gone into this, right? So I think that's really alarming, and it's a real worry. It's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I don't think we've got time to waste. And yeah. So look, where are we up to time-wise? 8:09. Is everybody still with me? Do you want me to keep going? Okay. All right. I just want to go back a little bit to here. So what are the key impacts? You know, Caloundra is a rapidly growing coastal community. We are, I think, the most rapidly growing electorate in Queensland, and I think we've probably had the absolute inverse in investment and focus on us. Yeah, we're a very rapidly growing area, but we're an imminent threat from an issue that has been hiding in plain sight for decades. The erosion and the breakthrough of Bribie Island and the loss of protection it provided to a community that flourished under the assumption of its ongoing protection is a tragedy that should have been avoided. And for more than 50 years, we've been calling to protect the island. And so right now we're in a really vulnerable position. And this is the impacts as far as we see them. We're talking about destruction of communities and businesses in Golden Beach and Caloundra from a storm inundation. And that's that JPB report that was published there. And it's some pretty grim reading. There's the continued degradation of the local economy. Key businesses and tourist zones now sitting adjacent to a body of stagnant water. And, it just doesn't have the flush that it used to. So we know that some of the water quality tests that we've done there are really quite alarming. Catastrophic ecological disaster, including loss of critical vegetation and habitat for endangered birds, terrestrial animals, marine life. Not to mention the loss of our cultural heritage, both Indigenous and historical World War II sites. Lest we forget, I think we have. And, that unsafe, ever-changing coastal bar. So, just a little graphic there. This is currently the postcard that's used in the main street of our town to promote our town. But this is actually what it would look like if it had been taken and used with an image on the 15th of January this year. You can see for yourself. I haven't doctored this, that is just Bluey's, these are Bluey's photos. But yeah, I think that speaks 1,000 words. So let's talk about the present. Where are we? So on the 27th of February 2025, I've been pestering the hell out of poor Kendal Moreton. I am so sorry, Kendal. Will you still speak to me? I have been literally blowing up your phone and anybody else's phone that will listen. But on the 27th of February, I knew that was the highest tide, and we had some pretty big seas on outside. And I said to Kendal, come and have a look at this narrow spot that's about to break through. I need to show you how fragile this is. And I'd been walking through there. Uncle Les and Don took me through there when I first decided to take up the mantle and try and do something to help these guys. And then I started visiting it every couple of weeks to see, and every time I went there, it got more and more fragile. And I wanted to show Kendal, I wanted to put Kendal's feet in the sand there, because it's one thing for me to show you a photo, but the minute you stand there, you have a totally different appreciation of just how little there is between us and the ocean. And I'm going to play you a video. It's going to be a little bit funny to start with, because just to let you know, when we actually arrived there to show Kendal the little bit that I was walking through, it no longer existed. The ocean was ripping through the middle of the island. So we couldn't actually land in that spot. So we had to land up at Lions Park. So this is about, 50, 80 metres south of Lions Park that I was going to take Kendal to. And we got a bit of a shock. I was not expecting to see this. And just a little language warning. I'm sorry, I was actually a little bit shocked. So I'm just going to show you this. I was full frothing. No, I was actually really, I couldn't believe it. So, this is, it'll just come good in a second.
Is the next breakthrough of Bribie Island. Yeah, mate.
It comes good in a sec, just bear with me. I turn it around.
That's fine, mate.
And I didn't have time to video edit this for you guys. Here we go. That's where we were landing.
It's sandy beach. It's currently got waves and ocean action overtopping it. You can see the foam on the water there.
It was quite shocking, wasn't it,
The ocean's
Kendal?
coming in. We've got another washover happening as we speak. And I was fearful it was going to happen with the cyclone.
Just me getting out of the boat. We were all a bit like, is there logs in the water? We were just sort of...
Yeah, we're good. We're good, Skip. All good.
Gotta love the Coast Guard. How good's our Coast Guard?
You're right.
What do we think of the Coast Guard? They're all right.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Here we go.
Pass me my thing, mate.
We had a journalist on board.
You're Johnny on the spot. Welcome to your constituency's biggest problem. You're seeing it happen live. It's coming in here.
Look at this. Sorry, apologies. I'm going to just talk over the top of these bits. My mum's here.
This is Lions Park.
Well, okay.
I'm actually a bit overwhelmed right now. Oh, I didn't expect to be showing you what I'm showing you, mate.
Just
That is the ocean coming in. Oh my God, no.
So this is a little rise that you used to walk up the dune.
Going was a sandy crescent of sand. Like it. This is the ocean coming in.
And so we're walking up a little bit of a rise. It goes up about a metre. Well, it used to. It doesn't now. It's actually gone.
You got a scoop here, buddy.
I'm talking to the journo at that point.
This is on the sets. You're going to have waves rolling in here, and that what we're witnessing here is a new washover and breakthrough on the southern section of Bribie Island, one of the narrow sections. We're here.
Look at this one come for Kendal.
Kendal Moreton this morning to show her what was potentially going to happen, but now it's actually happening.
Watch the vegetation here. She was putting in the hard work. I've still got the sand in my shoes from this day, Kendal.
It usually bounces 1 to 2 metres. This is a 2.1 metre high
This one.
tide. This is the highest tide of the cycle. And what we're seeing is it's gone. Bribie Island, we are seeing a new breakthrough happen.
It literally chased us, didn't it, Kendal?
Yeah.
I think we got up to our knees, so... So anyway, that's one. Not that one. This is the other one that I took. This is actually, I walked down to the spot, the fragile spot that I was walking through. There's one of our ships on the horizon there. Let's see if I can make this go. See that tree right there? I've got so many photos of it.
And we are absolutely, so just be careful, Kendal. There's a big set coming, mate. Move back.
Look at it just rushing through. And now that is a proper breakthrough. Is that fair to say, Uncle Les? Proper breakthrough.
Both ways, it's a breakthrough, and when it just runs one way, it's a washover. So
did everybody hear that?
There's been many washovers, but only two now, 2 breakthroughs that I know of, in 78 years that I've lived here.
So yeah, it was actually pretty confronting this day. I really did not expect to be seeing this. I was hoping to shock Kendal with how thin the island was. But then I think I really shocked her. Look at how much water's coming over there. So, anyway, let's keep moving on. Kendal was, I think, pretty much on the phone straight away. And to her credit, she was there and she was on the spot and she was listening. And I really thank her for doing that. Just a few more photos there. We talked about the storm surge. And then we just get into Cyclone Alfred mode, where I was just like, right, we've got to get out in front of this. We've got to try and explain to people what the risks are, what's happening, and that's what we did. And I've had a lot of feedback, and we got a lot of what's the word? I don't want to say brand awareness. It makes me sound like a real marketer when I say that, but we got the message out there. We got a lot of engagement with the community, and I think you know, Alfred did us a little bit of a favour because he took us right to the brink and he made us stare into the abyss. And he showed us what life could have been like. And look at how much he stalked us. Like, that is the nightmare position for a cyclone to cross our coast. Have a look at the size of the waves out there that were pounding our island. You know, that, I think we got, Roger, Commander, was it 7.8 we beat?
That was the top.
Yeah, so the record up until that point at the Caloundra wave buoy was 7.5. So we got a 7.8 metre wave reading out there on that wave buoy. So, and that's what they look like when they're coming for our island. So, and it does happen. We got lots of publicity.
The cyclone landing on the coast could have spelled disaster.
Unquestionably, we dodged a bullet.
But we didn't escape unscathed. Huge swells created by Alfred's passing weather system have now carved a second passage through the northern tip of the island.
Could have quite possibly driven an enormous storm surge through that gap in the island, straight at Golden Beach.
Entire trees were uprooted and became floating debris.
It has been eroding at a rate that is nowhere near commensurate with the amount of weather that's been occurring here.
The Pumice-Stone Catchment Management Board argues dredging of the shipping channel has left the barrier island now unable to withstand another hit.
All these things that are happening are going against the policies and principles of a Ramsar site, which realistically is the responsibility of the federal government to maintain and uphold.
The habitat of endangered migratory birds has also been reduced. Shell middens, sacred to the Kabi Kabi people, all but washed away.
It exposed the cultural midden that's been, hasn't been located. Now it's exposed it to the world. It's potentially going to lose the shell midden that's here.
The Deputy Premier has previously confirmed the government is examining next steps.
I've sent people over from the Environment Department and Transport and Main Roads onto the island today to have a look at it. I understand Jen's over there and Kendal's over there as well.
Jodie Clark, 7 News. A cycle.
Sorry. So we've talked about attenuation. So let's just talk about the future. I'm going to wrap this up now because I think we've all got the picture. We've got some choices to make because time has actually run out. And in case we haven't hammered this point home, had that cyclone have crossed anywhere north of, say, Mooloolaba up to Double Island Point, we would have been in that really dangerous quadrant of it. As it was, the Gold Coast took the brunt of that for us, and then our big brother, Moreton Island, tripped Alfred as he came over and took a little bit of the wind out of his sails, and then he decided to be, have a little dance here and then go up the side and hang around out here. And anyway, he was torturous. But in the last 100 years, we've had 25 cyclones that have come close to Caloundra and have crossed near the Sunshine Coast. So I just want to quickly talk about the A-line down on the Gold Coast. And Aaron here from ICM, he has one of his greybeards called Angus Jackson. Is that correct, Aaron? Would you mind just coming and giving a little quick 2-minute talk about the A-line on the Gold Coast? This is Aaron, everybody, from ICM. He hasn't been paid a brass razoo to be here. Thank you, mate.
Thanks, Jen. I'll keep it quick. Thanks, guys. In essence, back in the 50s, the Gold Coast got hit really bad with cyclones, again in the 60s and the 70s. As you can see in that picture up on the left-hand side there, houses were actually falling into the ocean. That scarp, that ended up being the end of the 67 erosion, was basically deemed the last straw for the Gold Coast. So the Gold Coast communities, not too dissimilar to what you guys are doing now, basically banded together and said this is enough, something needs to be done. So they essentially pushed the Gold Coast City Council to create a coastal management department, which was led by Angus Jackson, who Jen mentioned. Anyway, they put in this thing called the A-line, which is basically followed the 1967 erosion scarp by putting in a engineered rock wall that is along the length of essentially the entire length of the Gold Coast, and that became basically the last buck, the last stop, so erosion can't go any further back. Since the 60s and the 70s, the dune and the beach system was actually built out in front of the seawall. So all of those dunes that you see up and down the Gold Coast beach, they're called urban dunes. They were put there artificially, built out in front of the seawall to give the Gold Coast a natural buffer against any kind of cyclonic damages, which has just come through. And as you can see, the dune system's really just done its job by not even exposing that erosion scuff again and basically taking the brunt. That's the Gold Coast A-line in a nutshell.
Mate, brilliant. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you think we could put a sea line outside of Bribie Island, call it the Caloundra line? Something like that? Is it possible?
You can call it whatever you want. I mean, anything's possible. Yeah, I mean, we're doing these kinds of projects, not only on the Gold Coast, not only up and down the east coast of Australia, like we've just been called over to California to do something similar. And also, it's the community groups coming together that's really leading the projects we're doing over there. And the Gold Coast is lucky in the sense that it did get hit by these cyclonic events back in the 60s and 70s because it really enforced the idea that you need to be proactive. And it's the proactive coastal management of the Gold Coast that's basically turned the Gold Coast into what it is. Like, no one would be investing millions of dollars into high-rise buildings if there was a threat that the beach could just keep eroding all the way back. The Gold Coast is the Gold Coast because of the proactive coastal management that's been happening for nearly 5 decades.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anything's possible.
I'd like a little bit of that for Caloundra. What do you reckon, guys? Yeah. All right, so there's 2 options here that range between do nothing and let the rest of the island wash away and leave Golden Beach to fend for itself subject to open ocean conditions, except it has no foredunes. So what do? Build a rock wall. How does the Sunshine Coast Council defend its infrastructure? And what about our mates that live at Golden Beach? I'm not bloody leaving you guys behind. No way. No way. We're in this together. And a lot of people, I hear people on social media going, those rich buggers down there, if they want to build their houses on the sand, I'm not paying a bail amount. I just think that's absolute BS myself. I think that's not Australian. When a natural disaster hits anybody in our community, the Australian way is that we help them out, and that's what we should be doing here. Does anybody here actually think it's the fault of the people in Golden Beach? Raise your hands. Anyone? No, it's not. It's not. There's a set of circumstances here that are unfortunate, and we've just got to sort it out because we can. Or number 2, we do what every other community at the edge of the ocean has done, and we build some sort of coastal engineering protection stabilisation system. And it's not a dirty word. Okay, so here, what is the most balanced response? This is for discussion purposes only. I have used my graphic design skills here to put a representation together. And we did seek some advice. We spoke to leading coastal engineering companies and an expert coastal environmental consultancy. Thank you, Brian, for all of your wisdom that you shared with me. But a solution is entirely possible and likely necessary if we wish to protect our community from storm surge, inundation and erosion. And here's our vision for it. We want our island back in place. We want to relocate a safe bar up here in its original position. We want to get rid of some of the sand in here, dredge it, pump it up, make the island thicker, and then we want to revegetate that. That's going to protect residents and businesses and infrastructure from storm surge. The suburbs of Golden Beach and Caloundra, rank number 1 and number 2 around Australia right now. We don't want that. No way. We want to protect our town's coastal cultural heritage. We want to build back the beautiful amenity of the beating heart of our town that's currently overlooking a stagnant waterway that's giving people terrible infections. And I don't want people to get hung up on what this is built out of, right? Because there are so many options, and this is the cool thing about coastal engineering. There are so many cool advanced options that are really environmentally friendly. So it doesn't have to be a huge giant rock wall. There's lots of options, and that's what we would pay clever coastal engineers to come up with for us. We could even put a submerged reef out here, you know, if anybody's a surfer or, you know, some fish structure, some good stuff. We can restore our ecosystem, protect our wetland, restore our mangroves, our seagrass meadows, protect our shorebird habitat. This is all precious wetland down here, you know. And maybe we need to think about moving that channel. It's a possibility. I don't know how hard it is, but Kendal, could you ask your people about that? Thanks, mate. But the thing is, a solution is entirely possible. It's likely necessary, and I think we should just get on with it. And on that note, I reckon I should get on with it too, because I'm sick of myself. So we have got a wicked problem, and that's a complex social, cultural problem that is difficult or impossible to solve because of its interconnected nature and its lack of clear solutions and real-world constraints. This is the very definition of a wicked problem that we've got. But regardless of what you think caused it or what you think should be done, who here agrees that we've got a big problem on our hands? Yeah. And does anybody think it's the fault of the people whose houses and businesses are in the firing line? No. And who thinks we need support, urgent, transparent support from all three levels of government? Yeah. Absolutely. And you know what? I don't want to sound, you know, sycophantic or anything like that, but I can tell you that the response from the leaders that I've been privileged to enough they've been talking to me has been really excellent, top notch. Kendal has been listening. Terry's picking up the phone. You know, Andrew Wallace spent an hour and 3/4 with me. We currently have a cabinet minister here right now. So thank you, sir, for coming up. And the mayor on Saturday afternoon came and visited as well. So I think we're in a good spot here. And with that, I think I'd just like to finish up. We need to take urgent action. We are vulnerable. We need solutions that, solutions that rely on rock walls at Golden Beach and asking residents to raise floor levels. They're unworkable. We must use coastal protection systems back on our island, stabilise our bar and protect our community, and build our resilience to face the future. Our recommendations: Caloundra wants action. We want to do some emergency work so that we don't lose any more of the island. We want to establish an emergency task force to cut through the red tape. We want to get independent coastal engineering advice. We want to ensure independent scientific study is done about that sand migration. And we want to reinstate our barrier island. And frankly, I would say prevention is better than the cure. 200 million or 2 billion if we're going to try and build back. And playing the blame game here is futile. At what precise moment did we fail? Which exact decision or action or inaction led us to this place? One thing I want to say is we've got to unite, or we've got to work together, we've got to work collaboratively with our leaders and with our experts, and we've got to do that positively. And, you know, countless decisions and interventions into our waterway over the last 140 odd years have done that. A little bit of bounded thinking, poor decisions on behalf of generations of well-meaning humans for the last century have led us to build on the edge of the ocean in ways and places that perhaps we shouldn't have. But honest to God, that horse has bolted. We live here now. Our schools are here. Our houses, our businesses are here. Our economy is here. People were doing the best they could with the knowledge they had at the time. But there's been a lack of fair investment and very little focus on Caloundra, while being one of the most rapidly growing localities in Australia, in Queensland. That's not the future I want for my kids and my nieces and nephews who will be 5th generation locals to this beautiful place. I want them to have the joy the experiences that this place has given to me and to all of you. And I think we have a right to be confused, feeling a little let down, feeling angry, and like we want to blame someone or something for the position we're in. But anger is not going to change anything. Playing the blame game is futile, and it's a negative waste of our precious time and energy, and time's running short. We all must accept the truth and the power of Mother Nature. She is a powerful force, and a force that we've no doubt interfered with, but she's also a force that can be supported and guided if we choose to live by the ocean. I don't accept that we should do nothing. That option is untenable in the face of the information we've presented tonight. I do believe in innovation and science and clever, environmentally conscious coastal engineering, and I believe we can and should find a solution that gets the balance right for all of us, including for the fish and the birds and the seagrass and the turtles, the dugongs, the mangroves, because if we do all of that, it's for the benefit of all of us. So someone who loves this little town with all of her heart, I implore you all to read those documents. I implore you all to speak to everybody that you can about this and share the information. We must focus on not what divides us, but sharply on what unites us, our shared heritage.
Our thousands of votes must be worth something.
They absolutely are, sir, and our shared heritage, our beautiful waterway, our ecosystem, our charming, slightly daggy little seaside town that generations of Queenslanders have loved and enjoyed. We should all stop thinking about what our rights are, and we should start thinking about what our responsibilities are to each other, our future generations, and we need to really and truly start looking after the place that looks after us. So no more politics with our town's future, no more tearing each other apart. Caloundra wants action, the very best possible, the kind that delivers the greatest good for all concerned, including our environment and our ecosystem. We need leadership, the kind that's bold, courageous, and that can make it happen yesterday. And let me be certain, there are no absolutes here, right? There is no certainty. There's no categorically 100% right solution or 100% wrong response. There are just solutions that are better or worse, depending on where we as a community place our values. But there's one thing for certain, we are at a tipping point, and if we continue to do nothing, we may very well have nothing left to manage. So act we must, because continuing to do nothing for fear of failure is no longer an option. Thank you very much. So, I'm very conscious of our leaders' time, and they have come here. If you'd just like to hold on for a second, there's a couple of comments to make. I'd like to invite Kendal and Andrew. Kendal's going to talk.
Hello, good evening everybody. Look, I'll be as succinct and brief as I can because I know it's a long time and a lot of information. First off, thank you to the PPCMB, thank you for all of your work, thank you to the Coast Guard, thank you to all of the people that have been here for decades talking about this issue over and over again. I just want to quickly go through the journey of the last 12 months and the place that we've landed in today. So for me, this started in January 2023 when I door knocked as part of my election campaign on a guy called Graham who's sitting over there. I knocked on his door and he said, Kendal, we've got a big problem going on here. And you know, after door knocking on thousands of people's doors, you understand very quickly that there are many, many problems here. And that started a conversation with Graham that said, you really need to come and meet Ken Mewburn, who is the president of the PPCMB. Now, Ken was so generous in his time and his knowledge, and you know, throughout that process, kept door knocking, and what became abundantly clear that we had two main issues here in the Caloundra electorate that made us different to other electorates within the state. So the number one issue across our entire electorate is Caloundra Road, by country mile. But the number two issue across our electorate was the Pumice-Stone Passage and the Bribie Island Breakthrough. Across other electorates, there were different issues, but for right here and right now, it was Caloundra Road and it was the Pumice-Stone Passage. I'm also a resident of Pelican Waters, and I know how important this is to our community. So over the following, 8 months, across those 10,000 doors, this issue came up over and over again, and in May of 2023, anyone on the doors or on the phones who had brought Plummerstone Passage up as an issue got invited to a community forum. And I'm sure some people that are here tonight were here then. And we had Ken, we had John Groves, we had Roger from the Coast Guard, we had Les who developed the Pelican Waters Marina, and we had Sam O'Connor, who was our Shadow Environment Minister at the time, sit on a panel. And what becomes so powerful about that night is that that's the first time I've ever seen who are essentially the greenies amongst us and those that are essentially the developers amongst us, all saying exactly the same thing, that we have a problem here and we have to address our problem. When a whole community comes together and drives an issue, it becomes very, very powerful. So, moving on from there, and I also would like to acknowledge, they're not up here with these group, but also Les and Hamish from the Pelican Waters Marina, because they have also been instrumental in sharing their knowledge. So I thought it was 17 government departments, not 14, but you said 14.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I reckon.
Ken? Oh no, so it is 14. 14 government departments that have a say and touch this passage. And there are stories for people who live along the Esplanade who could retell those stories of having a problem. Like one was an abandoned tinny, and they rang and got referred to the next one and got referred to the next one and got referred to the next one and ended up ringing all 14, and the 14th one referred them back to the first one. You couldn't make this up. So we understand. Okay, so Sam O'Connor on the back of our community meeting asked some questions in Parliament, questions on notice, and the responses were very clear that there was no appetite to take any action, and that's, I think, about the time that Jen got involved, and it started to all ramp up with the attention. As part of our election campaign last year, one of the commitments that we made for the Sunshine Coast community was the Sunshine Coast Waterways Authority. And the Sunshine Coast Waterways Authority was partly born out of a place where we could see what had happened on the Gold Coast, and it meant that there would have been a legislative body that had jurisdiction over those multiple levels of government and multiple departments that run it. And the Sunshine Coast Waterways Authority is still an election commitment for this term of government. But then it started to get more urgent with the onset of ex-tropical cyclone Alfred. We missed a bullet with ex-tropical cyclone Alfred, and it could have been much, much worse. But of course, most of us in this room already knew that maybe a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And I acknowledge people like Les that have been saying this for a very long time and can understand your frustrations. But today was a great day for us, because today the Deputy Premier and I announced a significant investment into an inquiry about what has happened with the Bribie Island Breakthrough and what possible solutions can come out of it. Now, before you all go, another report, another inquiry, that's the last thing we need and it's the last thing we want. What makes this different is that it is truly independent of government. It is seeking true, independent, expert advice as to what's going on and what could be done about it. And it also has the ability to recommend any urgent action that needs to be undertaken to protect our community.
Well done. Thank you.
And although
Will you implement the recommendations when you get the report?
that's a good question. That's a good question. And what I'll say is what the Deputy Premier also said today when he was asked that question, which is First off, we need to set the terms of reference for the inquiry, which is done by the Department of State Development, not the Department of Environment. Okay, the terms of reference. Then the inquiry is expected to go for a few months. We can't put a timeline on that either, because it depends on the amount of time that the independent experts need in order to do a good job. We're not talking a year, we're talking a matter of months. What I would ask you is to understand how significant a step forward this inquiry is for us. So before we go, oh no, let's expect the worst, let the process ride out. It was made very clear by us today, and in particular the Deputy Premier, that the community will have input. I haven't seen that before. I have not seen that before on this issue. This is what we wanted. The fact that the inquiry has the ability to recommend any urgent outcomes that may come from that inquiry is a really powerful and significant thing. So until we see that report and see that inquiry and see the impact that community input has to it, then that is actually an impossible question to answer. I would recommend that everybody who has some knowledge around this, when the opportunity comes up, to have your input, because it was a community-driven and community-led project from the beginning, and the more community involvement, the better outcomes we're likely to get. There will be a website for the inquiry, which is not live yet, but I will put that on my Facebook page, Kendal Moreton MP, as soon as that website goes live, and you'll be able to see all the information there, but certainly keep you posted along the way. I would also like to acknowledge my colleague Andrew Powell, who is the Minister for Environment and has been very receptive to hearing the concerns of the Caloundra community. I'd also really like to strongly acknowledge David Crisafulli and Jarrod Bleijie, who have taken all of this and listened and listened and listened, and that doesn't happen every day, in any time in history, and we are lucky to have those guys making decisions. Thank you. And also very briefly, Councillor Terry Landsberg has been working with me and sharing information, and we've been on the same page on this for a really long time now. And also, Mayor Natoli, thank you for all of your support and listening to us down this end of the coast, because we all feel that Caloundra has been neglected in a lot of ways when compared to other parts of the coast. But we have a lot of hope. We have a lot of hope. You're our mayor. We have a fantastic new CEO at the Sunshine Coast Council, and yeah, Terry, you've been brilliant, and Jenny, you too, and Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendal.
Oh, and look, you can continue to ask questions. There's nothing here that is not going to be transparent, and the reports that have informed 2 levels of government over the last 30 years, that was then. Now we're all about what do we need to do moving forward. So that's what we're going to do, okay? And thank you guys for all your advocacy, and follow along for more.
I just want to actually say thank you, Kendal. Like, whenever I've called you, you've picked up the phone. You've come on a boat with me. We got our feet wet over there, and I know how hard you've been advocating for this. This is not a small thing that has happened here today, guys. The Deputy Premier on his weekend has actually made this happen, and I think we should be very hopeful that this is a step that we need to make. We do need independent coastal engineering advice here. There's no two ways about it. But don't forget, the really important part there was that this independent coastal engineering mob that are going to do this have got the ability to do some urgent work. Is that correct, Kendal?
If the inquiry finds that there is any urgent work, it can make recommendations that that work is done urgently. Now, what I know is that if it's a truly independent body tasked with the terms of reference in order to do that, then I have good faith that we're going to get some really strong recommendations.
Well, thank you, Kendal. Really appreciate all of your hard work. Would anybody else like to have a word? Here's our Mayor. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you all for coming out on this Monday night, and I've got Councillor Terry Landsberg and Jenny Broderick who might want to say a few words as well. So some of you will have watched over Tropical Cyclone Alfred and seen the warnings, the ask to be prepared. And during that time, I can tell you that the Premier did pick up the phone to me and say, we're really worried and we want to fix this situation going forward. And so did the Deputy Premier. And I was like, nobody knows what to do. That this is the issue, that there are so many different theories. And so today's announcement that there would be an inquiry to find what the way forward is by an independent coastal engineer led to the fact that we were here today to support that. And council officers will support, because we have a lot of the technical information and a lot of the data, and rather than starting from scratch, if we can provide that to the state, to the independent engineers who will look at that, then that is going to save a lot of time and make sure that we can get to the bottom of this situation. I'd like to acknowledge the gentlemen over here for all of their work and for not giving up. Every time someone has said no, and I know there have been many times that someone has said no, they did not give up. And before them, there was the Take Action Pumice-Stone Passage and the Caloundra Residents Association and other groups that are in the room tonight for not giving up. Thank you, because it allows people like me to stand with you and say, let us see this forward. Let us keep going with this. Let us keep the pressure on all levels of government so that we can get to the bottom of it and we can say now is the time. Tropical Cyclone Alfred made sure that the eyes of Australia were on this island and on Caloundra, so now is the time. We are so incredibly lucky that what looked like it was going to happen on the Tuesday of that first week did not unfold. I am so very grateful that didn't happen, but it has allowed us now to make sure that the eyes of Australia and decision makers at every level of government are on us. So now is the time. Don't give up. Don't let up on the pressure, and we will keep working together to make sure that at the end of this, it is not just another piece of paper and another report, because we do not need just another report. We need a report that informs the action. So thank you. Terry, did you want to say something too? You've been very big on this, or I know that Federal Member Andrew Wallace has one final thing to say as well, but will I hand quickly over to you, Terry, who's been working on this for a long time. Thank you for everything you have done, and please do keep that pressure going.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I just want to obviously acknowledge all our special guests here tonight. The work that's gone on, especially with the PPCMB, the work behind the scenes, especially with TAP and the Caloundra Residents Association. It's taken many years to get to this point in time here tonight. It's people power. It's empowering our community to have a say in how we're going to move forward and protect the Pumice-Stone Passage. In regards to the announcement of the Deputy Premier this morning at the Powerboat Club, I just want to make sure that it'll be a priority as your council to make sure that the technical task force that has been spoken about that will be assembled will make sure that there are people, representatives from significant community groups, both social, cultural and environmental, will be part of that group to make sure that we all get a say and we all make sure that we get the best bang for buck out of this whole process. I might just hand over to Andrew Wallace, but thank you for everyone. Make sure your voice is heard, because as a council, we collect so much data. I know a lot of surveys that we run, and have your say on the council website, but now is the time for people to stand up and have your voice, and you'll be listened to. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for all for coming out, and I will be mercifully brief. I want to congratulate Kendal and the state government for the work that they've done in announcing the package today. As a federal government, look, this is beyond politics, and I want to assure you that if a request is made of the federal government, whether we are the LNP is in opposition or whether we are in government, I will do what I can to assist the state from a funding perspective. Because at the end of the day, if the recommendations that come out of this inquiry put a dollar figure on what the costs of rectification will be, it's likely that the costs are likely to be something that the council and the state are unable to fund themselves, and that's where the federal government should come in. This will require 3 tiers of government to address the issue, and I will do whatever I can, no matter who's in government, to ensure that the funding is there for the work to be done. Thank you very much to Jen and for all of the group here, and importantly, thank you for coming out and thank you for your time tonight.
Yes, I'd just like to say thank you to our representatives of council, government, and a particular big thank you to Jen tonight for her presentation. And a thank you to all of you people who have come out tonight. It's amazing to see so many people assembled into one place, and all obviously with the same concerns as we've had. For so long I listened to that old adage, there's always a light at the end of a tunnel. And after a number of years that we've paddled around this issue, I began to think that light was on the front of an oncoming freight train. But tonight, I've got great hope that that's not the truth, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and we're going to achieve what we set out to get. And thank you so much to all.